I've been using an iPhone as my daily driver since the iPhone 3G. However, recently I've been trying out some Android phones. Can they sway me? Welcome back to Ellis Reviews, and thank you as always for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, there's the button. So I've been an iPhone user for so many years now, longer than I can remember. And I have flirted with Android in the past. Many years ago I tried out a Moto G. Remember them? But something kept bringing me back to this device. Recently I've taken a month-long break from the iPhone, but also the Apple Watch. This is a Casio G-Shock if you're interested. It's been fascinating, partly because it's given me the chance to try out some Android phones, but also because it's given me 5 things that I would love to see in iOS that Android has, which I'll get onto in a moment. So a very quick few notes on the iPhone and how I feel about it at the moment. It is my device of choice. It's my smartphone that I've used for many, many years. I've talked about this in my iPhone 12 Pro review, which I'll leave a link to up here. It feels like we've reached peak smartphone with these devices. There's only so much stuff you can do with them. You can make them faster, and you can add things like LiDAR, which no one knows what that does. You can also add things like 10-bit Dolby Vision recording for video, which again, no one is going to use. In fact, I've even forgotten what else the iPhone 12 Pro does over the 11. It's just, I don't get that excited about it anymore. Despite that, I still think iOS is a superb mobile operating system. It's got faults like any operating system, but I think just because of the way it marries up so nicely with the hardware, it's just super smooth, and it's supported brilliantly by developers as well. My limited experience with Android has always been one where I've wished it was as speedy as iOS. It's always felt cumbersome, too configurable. I think you can have too much of a good thing with that. But that was until I tried out the Google Pixel 4a last October. But we're a few months on from that, and I've decided to try out 2 other phones as well. The first one is this, the Moto G9 Power, which firstly is massive. Got used to the iPhone 12 Pro's size, which for me is about the perfect smartphone size. This, by comparison, is absolutely huge. It's got an ultra widescreen screen. It's just very tall. It's the tallest phone I've ever had in my hand. It's also very cheap. I think at the moment you can get this for about £159 in the UK. And there are a few corners cut because of that, as you'd expect. So for example, the screen itself is only 720p, which you do notice to a degree. It's not bad build quality, but it's a little bit plasticky. The camera is pretty bad, to be honest. You know, you have to hold it really steady to get a decent shot. And Android on this does feel a little bit sluggish. It's not terrible, but it's a bit slow. Whatever is in this is struggling a bit, but to be honest, at £159, that's less of an issue really. What's incredibly impressive is the battery life. Now, it's claimed it will do up to 60 hours. I think that's probably about accurate. I've never used a phone, apart from Nokia's back in the day, that has lasted as long as this. That is definitely the selling point. The price, battery life, and the fact it has that big screen, which, you know, for watching movies and YouTube videos on, it's actually pretty good for that. The other Android phone I've been trying is this. It's the Legion from Lenovo. Now, I had no idea that Lenovo made phones, but they do, and this is what is known as a gaming phone. Now, I knew these things existed. I'd never used one in my life, and wow, are they a different type of device. It's hard not to like it, really. It comes in this box that when you open it, it makes this noise. I'll get some B-roll for you. Here it is. Unique is definitely a way to put it. Very punchy branding. It looks like it's kind of come out of a alien film, you know. It's just something about it. It's just fascinating, I think. It's not cheap. It's £800 in the UK. It contains a Snapdragon 865 Plus. I don't know if that's any good, let me know in the comments. The screen is big, again, not quite as big as the Moto G, but it's 6.6 inches, it's an AMOLED screen as well. It's lovely, actually, really nice. And it's also the first high refresh rate screen on a smartphone I've ever used. This goes up to 144 Hertz. You do notice it. It's not game changing, if I'm honest, but it's noticeably smoother in that respect than the iPhone. But perhaps the most interesting thing about this phone is that it's designed to be used in landscape. So all of the branding on the back is in landscape. And actually, when you turn the phone on, it starts off in landscape mode. And that's obviously because it's a gaming phone. But the whole thing for me feels a bit gimmicky. That's a little bit unfair because I'm not the phone's intended audience. It does have some cool stuff. You know, it's got the fingerprint scanner under the screen. You don't get that on an iPhone. And that means the screen does literally fill the entire device. It's absolutely almost a bezel-less design. But where's the selfie camera, you might be asking? Well, it's actually, this took me by surprise, it kind of pops up from here, from inside the casing, which, like I say, took me by surprise when that first happened. Again, nice little gimmick. Battery life is pretty good. It's pretty heavy, and I don't mind that. I think I expect it to be a bit heavier, and it's reassuring because you kind of get the impression that there's some serious stuff going on inside this. So yeah, not really a phone for me, but I'm impressed at the engineering and just the fact that it is unashamedly a gaming smartphone. Very quick mention for what I've decided to use as my daily driver during my month-long test without the iPhone. And yeah, it's the Google Pixel 4a, which, as I said last October, I'll let you go and watch that video before waffling on today about it, but it's a superb Android phone. I think it has two selling points really. One of them is the price. At the moment you can get this for £300 in the UK. It's normally £350 I think. For any smartphone that's a really good price. Secondly, it's got the best camera I've used on a smartphone to date. It's not for everyone's taste and it does process images quite heavily, but I just like what it does with imagery. It produces these sharp, punchy, very dramatic, contrasty images. I just like it. It's very fast, it's got an OLED screen, which is great, charges via USB-C, I love the size, I just love everything about it. I've genuinely missed it since I've been using the iPhone again. So this has been my daily driver, and as mentioned at the start of this video, I now have 5 things that I wish iOS did as well as Android. First one is rearranging apps on the home screen. I hate jiggle mode. You do it by pressing and holding on an app icon and the whole screen starts jiggling around and you can move them about. Great in theory, but it's so difficult to get apps in the right position. And if you've ever got into that world of hurt when you try and put an app on the last line of a screen, but the other one moves and jumps somewhere else, and then you end up accidentally creating a folder, and then you remove that one out of the folder, and then that folder only has one app in it, which you didn't want to be in a folder. It's just teeth-grindingly irritating. On Android, it's so easy. There's no such thing as jiggle mode. You just press and hold on an app and move it. You can create folders easily, you can move apps between screens very easily. It's one of these things that Apple seems to make an absolute pig's ear of, and Android makes it effortless. The second thing is swiping left from the home screen. If you swipe left from an iPhone home screen, you get the widget screen and you can add widgets, and it's got better over time. On Android, if you swipe left, you get what used to be called Google Now. And these days it's basically just a news feed, but it's a news feed that is tailored for you. It does take note of your search history if you're signed into Google, and it feeds you blogs, news articles, etc., which it thinks you will find interesting. I'm not keen on being followed around by adverts that are of no use to me, but when things are served up for me automatically that I genuinely want to read and find interesting, it's a genuine benefit. And the swipe left on Android phones seems to do that consistently. By comparison, Apple forced you to go into Apple News. I know you can add widgets for it, and I know you can add the Google News app as well onto iOS, which is fine. They're just additional steps really, and the problem with Apple News these days is that it is so heavily pushing you towards a subscription that it's just off-putting. So yeah, Apple, swipe left from the home screen, give us some news, give us a tailored news feed that we can very easily access. I love that on Android. The third thing is widgets. Now I know you can add widgets now to iOS. They're a bit limited, which is understandable. It's a new feature. It's going to take time for third-party developers to add their own widgets. But as a result of that, because they've been around on Android for so long, there's so many of them and they're so configurable. They're easy to place where you want them to be on the screen. And while I don't tend to use widgets on iOS because they're not particularly useful for me, on Android, I actually genuinely use them and find them beneficial. The fourth thing is, it's a bit of an aesthetic thing if I'm honest, but it's wallpaper. Whenever a new version of iOS comes out, I'm always immediately disappointed with the wallpapers on offer. They're just lackluster. I know you can put your own wallpaper on, and most of us end up doing that anyway. It's just as though Apple is saying to us, look, we didn't want to give you wallpaper in the first place. You asked and asked for it, we gave you it. This is what you're getting, deal with it. You go into the default wallpaper selection for Android, and there's all these folders that you can choose from landscapes, cityscapes, etc. I find myself on the Pixel using the default wallpaper choices just because they're so varied and so interesting and look so great. Apple's are just a bit boring. I'd just give us some, for a company that is so design-led, I expect better wallpaper. The fifth and last thing I want really on iOS that Android does better is the lock screen. Now the lock screen on iOS has improved over time, it's become more functional, but again, it's behind Android, and it's clear that Android has been better at this and been honing this for a much longer period of time. And I just find personally that on Android devices, the notification screen is more, interact with it more easily. It does more stuff. For example, it has these lovely little design touches where the notifications that you can't see on the screen are just basically indicated with a little icon for the app. And as you draw up the list of notifications, that app icon jumps into view and gives you the full notification. It's just playful, it's a bit of fun. And also on Android, their version of the control center where you can change the screen brightness and turn Wi-Fi on and off, all that sort of stuff, that is always present at the top of the notification screen, whereas on iOS, it's a completely separate thing. You have to swipe from somewhere different on the screen. I've never understood why they're separate on iOS, doesn't make sense. On Android, it's just one screen for notifications and control center. So will I switch from iOS to Android? No. Now, the 5 things that I mentioned a moment ago that I want to see on iOS that Android does better, they're nice to haves. They're not deal breakers. They're not big things throughout my daily life. Android, from my perspective, has come really far, and I understand why so many people like it and so many people choose to use it as their daily driver. But for me, it's probably 2 things, I think. One of them is laziness, really, and 2 is the fact that I am pretty deep within the Apple ecosystem. The kind of things that I've missed during this test from the iPhone are handoff, so the ability to easily send things from my iPhone to my Mac, and also that certain third-party apps just feel a bit more polished on iOS. A really good example of that is Medium. I use Medium for blogging, and there's a Medium app that I use to check stats and all that sort of stuff. And you can do the same stuff on the Medium app for Android, but it feels not quite as polished. I also think Android is still a bit too configurable for my liking. I understand why people like to have a very configurable mobile operating system, but for me, as I've said in previous videos, I'm much more, as I've got older, I've become an out-of-the-box type person. I want things just to work. But it is clear that Apple need to up the game a bit more with iOS, make it a bit more fun, learn a little bit more from Android, stop worrying too much about being accused of copying Android. Just take the best bits of Android, and if you can, make them better. Now, if you want to hear a bit more about what I think about the iPhone 12 Pro and you're thinking about buying one yourself, keep watching for a link to my video review of that phone. But in the meantime, thank you as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.